Hi folks, my name is Suzanne Baker. I'm the Fall and Injury Coordinator for Nova Scotia Health. I've been doing this for 17 years. It's great to be here. I want to talk to everybody about fall and injury reduction and prevention in the community. So I'm here to talk about that anyone can fall. So what we're looking at is we're going to talk about maintaining independence. We're going to talk about, how can we stay in our homes longer and how can we do that without actually falling. So when you see this picture, you say, what do these people have in common? I know some of them are really older looking. So we've got, I think it's Nancy Reagan, the older Pope, Fidel Castro, a couple, the Queen, a couple famous people. When you look at all them, like what did they have in common? Well, all of them actually fell at one point in their life. Some had more serious falls and some did not have as many serious falls. So there were some injuries. So overall, when you're thinking about it, who's ever fallen? You sit down and think to yourself, have you ever fallen? I've fallen several times. I actually had a mom and a grandmother that both fell, both broke their hips and ended up in long-term care. So think about yourself, if you have had a fall, if you injured yourself, if you didn't injure yourself. It's just something to think about. So some of the fall facts that we have are, we have had happen over the years, over the age of 65, normally is when we have a higher fall rate, and that's 1 in 3 people that will actually fall. If you're over the age of 80, it's usually 1 in 2. So you start looking at those stats and it actually increases a lot. If you fall once, you're twice as likely to fall again, and if you're over 80 and you fall once, you're sometimes 9 times more likely to fall again. One of the key things to remember is falls are not part of normal aging. It isn't something that just happens as we get older, and women are 3 times more likely to be hospitalized than men are if we have a fall. So we are in an older province in terms of age. Our demographic, we have, I think, over 30% of our population is over the age of 65. So after a fall, one of the things that can happen for you is, you start to worry and you lose thoughts about your independence. So again, after a fall, you may sort of lose confidence. So I think of, again, going back as a story with my mother when she fell, she did have that fear of falling. She was very nervous to get out there again, and she just really wanted to stay inside. So I think that's something that happens quite often. They're afraid, that fear of falling is a thing. They stop going out and stop doing things they enjoy. So then what can happen also is you get decrease in your muscle mass and your atrophy in your muscles. So you start to lose the ability to actually walk and lose some of that strength. And with that, you start to lose confidence. So it's just kind of a spiral that goes downwards, and it's starting in terms of losing some of your independence. So this is just a little humor. We look at this guy sitting there with his shoelaces undone, and they say, the doctor looks at him, he says, "Are you the guy that keeps falling?" Well, yeah, he does, because he has his shoelaces undone, and that's why he's going to fall. But there's other reasons and other risk factors out there in terms of why we fall. So people fall for a variety of reasons, and we have tons of risk factors that are out there. So it could be just our balance is off. It could be in terms of when we go to the bathroom, we might be on a certain medication, but there's lots of puzzle pieces that we can put together. There, again, dizziness, our surroundings, so many things that can cause us to increase our risk of falls. So I guess the question is, we start looking at is, what can we do to deal with some of those risks? So some of the risk factors that we have are biological and we can't change them, but there's other risk factors, behavioral ones, we have environmental ones, and those can all actually be modified in some way. So it becomes sort of a bit of a balancing act, trying to figure out, so if we have 2 or more of those risk factors, we want to think about how can we modify them, or can we modify them in any way. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. This is a great image. It's a handout actually about a self-assessment tool about, are you at risk of falling? And so you answer all the questions, and then there's actually some suggestions based on the number of yeses you get, and it tells you what you might possibly be able to do to sort of mitigate your risk in terms of falls. So I guess what we look at is, how can we take action? That's the key. What can we do? What can we do to improve or help ourselves out? So there's 4 things: checking your medications, keeping active, watching your step, like again in your surroundings, and if you have any sort of dizziness, that you should talk to your primary care provider about it. So the first one that we're going to focus on is about checking your medications. So as we age, sometimes our metabolism changes. When we do have medications, it's something important. We need to review our medications on a regular basis. So there are opportunities at your local pharmacist. You can go in, they have full medication reviews, or you could actually go into your primary care provider and ask them about your medications. So I guess when we stop and we think about the number of medications we're taking, there are some seniors that are on anywhere between 12 and 15 medications. And those medications don't only include the ones that are prescribed, but if you're taking a vitamin, if you're taking something else, those are also considered because they all interact together. So it's really important to know, hey, what are we taking? You know, why are we taking these? So when you sometimes go to the hospital and you're ill, they might give you something to sleep. And then people come out of the hospital and 20 years later, they're still taking that sleeping medication, which isn't beneficial. So we need to find out what medications you're taking, why are you taking them? Do you still need to be taking them? Because as we age, we do metabolize medication differently. And so it's really important that we are aware of what we're taking. Also about how they interact with each other, because often we take medications that interact and we don't know, we might be getting side effects that are causing us, you know, to be dizzy. So there are some specific medications, benzodiazepines, anything that's a sedative, those also cause dizziness. So it's important that, you know, if you're having those side effects, that you talk again to your primary care provider about that. So prescriptions, as I said, if you're taking any herbal supplements, even any vitamins, any over-the-counter drugs, Tylenol, any of those things, Gravol, they can all cause you to be more dizzy and increase your risk of falls. So again, your surroundings, one of the main areas that's a really key place is the bathroom. You know, getting to the bathroom is difficult if that's a situation. You can also have grab bars in your bedroom. They can install grab bars, poles for you to help you. But when you do get in the bathroom, which is one of our key areas in terms of slips and falls, it's really important to have those grab bars installed. So a grab bar in terms of right by the toilet, grab bar when you get in the shower or the tub. And then you also have to make sure you're using the right equipment. So there's other things out there like reachers, like if you have a hard time, you know, bending down to get something off the floor, there's a reacher that you can go to grab the reacher and you can use that to pull that up and get it off the floor. If you're not sure and you want to, you can actually get an assessment done by your occupational therapist. They can come into your home, they can do a full assessment in terms of what your home looks like. So they're going to check your stairs, they're going to check that key place, your bathroom and your bedroom, and make sure that you have everything that you need that's going to make it as easy as possible to move around your house. So another thing about watching your step is, of course we have winter here, it sometimes is difficult. We have slippery conditions, we go from warm to cold. You have to think about what you're carrying, you know, pay close attention. Being on your phone and trying to carry a bag of stuff, probably not a good idea. Take your time. We can get grippers for our shoes that we can wear when we're outside, not for inside, but also what other type of equipment. OT can offer many things. We might not all know what we need, but again, if you're having an assessment by OTs, which is an occupational therapist, they can tell you if you need a cane, they can tell you if you need a cane with a metal tip on the bottom, they can tell you if you potentially need a walker. Some people that have walkers and canes has kept them completely independent, which is a real bonus for them to keep going. If you don't know which one you need, the best place to go is the Red Cross. They do have a loan program. You can get equipment from there, all sorts. They do have commodes, they do have wheelchairs, they have walkers, canes, everything that you would need. And again, I think it's really important that we know that this has to be fitted to you by an occupational therapist. So don't go out to the yard sale next door and buy a cane or a walker, you know, for yourself or for your, you know, your mother or father might be older. It really is important to have them see an OT, to have them actually prescribe what is the best walking aid that they need based upon, you know, their condition and in terms of safety. So I think that we have to keep that in mind. There's also a really great program, it's called Rate My Treads, and I think it's ratemytreads.ca, but you can go in, and depending on your winter boots that you have, you can actually look up and see which boots are the best possible boots for the winter. There's something new out there, it was on Marketplace that they talked actually about, they put little pieces of metal in some of the shoes and the boots within their soles so that they are actually better to use in the wintertime. So the next thing we want to focus on is about looking at your eyes, right? Vision is really important, and being someone that wears glasses, and I wear the glasses that are the progressive glasses. So when you reach the age of 65, they're telling us really to move away from the progressives and move more to sort of the bifocal glasses, or potentially wearing two. When you look at something, I mean, there's just very fine lines with the progressives where you're looking at the bottom, the middle, or the top. So it's better if you can wear the two. When you look down, sometimes with the crazy carpets that we have, it looks like they're moving, but they're not. Just in terms of our depth perception, going up and down stairs is also something that we want to make sure that we feel comfortable when we're doing that. As you get older also, and I can attest to that, the glare, right? Glares and at dusk is a difficult time to drive. It's harder to see. Also when you go into maybe the hospital and the floors are shiny, it's very glary and it's very hard to tell. Some people actually think it's wet when it's not. So we have to know, and I think getting our vision checked. If you have issues with your eyes, I think that you can go after the age of 65 every year. If not, I think you're set up still to go every 2 years and have your prescription sort of looked at. And the hard part for me with that is I know it's expensive, especially to get glasses. There are places online that are offering glasses at a cheaper price. Buying your glasses you don't necessarily have to buy them at an optometrist, because I think the cost is extreme. So I mean, there are other places that you can go to get them. Other things, like if you are a diabetic, that's an issue. We get more neuropathies, potentially like our feet, but our vision can also change based upon being a diabetic. So there are things that can happen, but again, that's why it's so important to have your vision tested on a regular basis, because again, your balance might be off, and those are things that we have to think about. So on to the next thing, which is watch your step, and what are we wearing for footwear? So footwear is key. When I go in to do education in lots of places, I kind of laugh because I always check everybody's footwear out. Some people have the high stilettos in the middle of winter. I've never been a stiletto wearer. I've always liked flat ones and very practical. So it's important we check our footwear out. Again, we live in a slippery environment. When you're going outside to inside, if they have a carpet to wipe your feet, make sure you're doing that, because we can slip very easily. So, as I mentioned earlier, you can rate your treads. Go on the website. There's actually a lab in Toronto Rehab Center, and they actually have pods that have ice on them, and people wear different types of footwear, and they test them to see which ones are the best in icy conditions. And as I said, you can go and you can sort of look up online to see which ones might be good and bad, and if you're buying the right ones, and if they're of any benefit in terms of walking outside. And you'd be surprised, because some of the ones that you see, I think the big treads, everybody think those are really good, but in fact, they're not the best for slippery conditions. And I was quite surprised, so it's interesting to look them up. Here, this is actually telling us what the ideal shoe is. Now, of course, it's not the most attractive shoe, but they do say it is the most ideal. So what happens is the heels are fairly low, but there's a beveled edge around them. It's better if we have shoes that don't tie. If you can get Velcro for your shoes. Lots of points to keep in mind in terms of, we don't want really high heels. We don't want them too tight. We want to have enough room on the bottom, so when we're walking, we can actually feel what we're touching. So if we were to walk on a rock, we're actually going to feel that on the bottom of our foot, and that's important in terms of our perception and what we're doing with our shoes. So this is again about our surroundings. When you look at some of the photographs, you what can you pick out, like that's good and bad? We talked about the carpets, the throw rugs. We talked about grab bars that are in bathrooms. Again, what's your flooring like? And even when you stand by your sink, what's under there? And it's not just our steps and what we're watching inside, but it can also be outside, right? So it's important that we have that in mind. Keeping our environment as safe as we possibly can. Hopefully right now, with some of the universal changes that they're making in terms of housing with accessibility, doorknobs that are round are now being turned into levers, which is much easier if you have arthritis or something in your arms. Even just our stairs and the handrail. Handrails are actually supposed to come down and go beyond the last step. So when you're outside in your environment, you might look and you're going downstairs and it stops, but you still have 2 steps to go. That's not the right, it needs to actually be longer and take you right to the bottom step. The uniformity of the stairs, like the height and the width of a stair, there is a special height and width that they should be. It's supposed to be 7 by 11. It doesn't always happen, but in now coming more with universal design, hopefully we'll see those changes like within our homes and new builds that are coming up. The only other thing, again, I wanted to go back just briefly about where you're walking outside. Quite often when you go to walk across a crosswalk, they have the painted crosswalk. That can be very slippery when it's wet. Having your decks outside, they get quite slimy in the winter. And also, you know, when you're doing your deck, you can actually throw sand into your deck so that it's much better. So the last thing we're going to talk about is dizziness. So when you get dizzy, it's really important that we speak up and we talk to someone about that. It's not just happening because we're getting older or for any normal reason. So we really need to talk to our healthcare provider or someone about that. Again, you know, thinking about your medications, something that might make you dizzy, if you get lightheaded, if you get up too fast, so blood pressure and other things, we also have to keep those in check in terms of dizziness. So when we are going to talk about speaking up about dizziness, and if we do feel dizzy, little thing, when you get up in the middle of the night, we shouldn't jump up right at night and get up right away. Sit on the edge of your bed for a minute, get yourself oriented, because I think when you wake up out of a sleep and have to go to the bathroom, you know, you might wake up and you will feel dizzy if you stand up right away. Having that night light to be able to follow gives you some direction, but also little things that you can do before you get up is you can clench your fists and you can just circle your ankles around, and that gets the blood flowing through your body. And then when you get up very slowly, you know, stay by the edge of your bed so you can still feel the bed on the back of your legs. And then before you walk, make sure that you're feeling like you can move. If you need to wear slippers, that's great. If not, bare feet are great because of course they're very grippy. And if you do feel dizzy when you get up from that point, just stop. Don't keep walking. You can sit down and take a minute, because again, this all has to do, you know, we could have hypotension or hypertension, can all affect your blood pressure. So we need to feel and figure out what's going on and how we can fix that. So more things that are included about being dizzy is about being hydrated. So we hear this quite often about how we're supposed to drink our 6 to 8 glasses of water a day. It is really important. If we're not doing that, that can cause us to be dehydrated, and that actually can cause us to become dizzy. I think when we're younger, we don't focus on that, but as we get older, it is something that you should be really aware of. I know for me, and for as other people when they get older, you're like, well, I don't want to drink too much because then I'm going to get up all night. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it is important to drink during the day. So, you know, if you have a tea or a coffee in the morning, but you're also drinking water as you go through the day. 6 to 8 glasses keeps us well hydrated. Another important thing is about eating well, or just eating on a regular basis, and having that energy from eating. So we want to look at what our nutritional value is. Again, having a dietitian if you're not sure what you should be eating. And that also is something that, you know, keeps us eating regular times so that we don't end up feeling dizzy or weak because we haven't eaten enough or we haven't drank enough. So back to medications in terms of postural hypertension, depression, all of those medications can cause dizziness. So knowing what ones we're on, making sure we're taking the right dose, and if we still need to be on them, or if there's something else that we can do instead. Those are key things that we need to keep in mind. So this is an important thing. Again, it varies for everybody whether they feel comfortable doing it, but it's how do you get up from the floor if you've had a fall. So if you've had a fall, first, one key thing to remember is you might have a landline, but it's also really important if you have a cell phone that it's close to you when you're sitting in your chair at night, or if you have a cordless phone, because if you fall on the floor and you can't get up, you somehow need to contact someone. Quite often people might not have their phones and they could lay on their floor until the next day when somebody comes in to help them. So there are ways, and this explains to us how do you get up from a fall. So when you're on the floor, if you can crawl to the closest chair. Now you'd have to get on your knees, which sometimes people can't. I have a hard time going on my knees, but for that moment in time, if you could get on your knees, and then you would actually get yourself and push yourself up in your chair and then slowly get into your chair. So what can I do after a fall? Well, one of the most important things when you have a fall is don't be embarrassed. I think that's our first reaction. I know it's my first reaction when I've fallen before, but always go in and tell your healthcare provider. I have had a fall, because there's lots of reasons why it can happen, you know, and find out if there's something that, you know, she can offer or he can offer to you in terms of, you know, an assessment, like the assessment we did at the beginning. So they might ask you the question like, have you had your eyes checked? Let's look at your medications. What are you doing for exercise? But it's so important that we tell them so that we can actually be connected to somebody to get some help. Balance, as I said, is also connected to our hearing, which is another thing if we have our hearing checked. And hearing and vision are very important, of course, in our surroundings. And those can also, as they decrease in terms of getting, you know, our vision's getting less and maybe our hearing is becoming a little harder, can also cause us to be slightly off balance. So most important, I want everybody to know falls are not a part of normal aging. Just because we get older doesn't mean we're going to fall. Most falls, I would say 90% of the falls we have are preventable. Some people will say, oh no, but I came in and I slipped, but again, I was rushing. So yeah, it's keeping and maybe not rushing, taking your time, so that's important. You know, but take action, do something about it. As I said, talking to your healthcare provider about it and sort of looking at what your risk factors are. So from that assessment tool that we had at the beginning, sort of looking and asking you questions, it gives you ideas as to what can I do? What kind of action plan can I have? And always tell someone that you've had that slip, trip, or fall and come up with a plan of what you can do to improve your balance and your strength and potentially prevent yourself from falling and having an injury that's from that fall. When it comes to winter, one thing that we promote is we want to walk like a penguin. We look at penguins, they don't fall too often, they have that low center of gravity. So when in the winter time comes, what we do is we want to stand, we want to put our feet out, point them outwards, and we want to bend our knees a little bit. And when we want to walk flat-footed, and we kind of want to waddle as we walk, so that it prevents us from falling. So when you see me or anybody else and they're walking like a penguin, that's why. So walk like a penguin, stay safe, and report your falls and tell somebody so you can get some help. So something you can do, whether you're uncomfortable, again, when the winter comes, we see a lot of people will stay inside, but it might not just be that, it could be other things. When you park somewhere, walking quite a distance to get to one place. So if you are feeling that way, you can actually apply and get a handicap sticker for your car so that you can, when you go into certain places, some places are quite far to walk from. So absolutely, there's handicap spots. Normally they're supposed to have a certain number, but you will be able to park there so you can get into where you're going a little bit easier. And I mean, some people, again, you know, if they are having those troubles, then that also can help to bring up some conversations about that also, and about your nervousness about falling and those kinds of things. So if you need to get that handicap sticker, you have to actually go to your primary care provider, and then when they tell you they can give you a referral that you need that, you take that into Access Nova Scotia, and it's actually free. You don't have to pay any money for it. So don't be afraid to think that there's a cost involved, and make sure that you have that done. If you're interested in having me come in to do a presentation about fall prevention, I am available, so please contact me via my email and we can set something up. It's been great to be with you. Thanks for joining and watching about fall prevention. If you need to contact me, the best way to get me is at my email address, which is Suzanne, SUZANNE, .Baker @nshealth.ca. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks.